There is nothing like a good Christmas movie about an elf that's really not an elf, but is convinced that he is and would do anything to keep the Christmas spirit alive. Oh, and by the way, that elf is Will Ferrell. And that's why today in Flick Summary, Elf. This unforgettable Christmas classic opens with Papa Elf. We'll explain who he is just in a bit, telling the audience about the life of an elf and the marvelous work they do. He explains how they work day and night making toys for the exciting date we all know and love. Curiously, though gnomes and trolls have attempted to help in the toy-making craft, humans have never stepped foot in Santa's workshop. That is until 30 years ago, and
as you may have guessed, that's where our story begins.
We then cut to an orphanage where a baby is getting tucked in by one of the caretakers on Christmas Eve. Santa then comes through the chimney and prepares to do his thing. You know, leaving presents and such. However, the baby wasn't asleep at all and is absolutely enthralled by the sack of gifts.
Oh, I want one of those!
Somehow, he gets out of the crib and creeps into the sack without Santa noticing, which could send him to prison for kidnapping, but we won't do technicalities in movies. Anyway, as soon as Santa finishes his roundup delivering presents, he returns to his home at the North Pole, where the other elves await his arrival. As soon as he gets there, he excitedly announces that it's time to start preparations for the next Christmas. But when he notices the sack is moving, he realizes he has accidentally brought a foster kid along with him, who he decides to name Buddy. Though at first he was a little unsure about what to do, he remembers he's a pushover for babies and accepts him into the elven family, with Papa Elf, the narrator at the beginning, serving as the adoptive parent. Fast forward 30 years later, Buddy is all grown up and unaware that he is human, though it's rather obvious as he stands out from his community, giving his enormous size in comparison to the elves. Having said that, his height wasn't the only thing that differentiated him from his elven peers. You see, elves have incredibly fast hands, which helps them prep all the presents for the nice kids in time for Christmas. But again, he doesn't have a clue.
I don't have a clue what you're talking about.
Given his human nature, Buddy lacks those impressively fast hands and is unable to make the 900 HA sketches he's required to make during his shift, falling astoundingly short in relation to the elves.
I made 85.
Ugh, poor Buddy. He then proceeds to harshly insult himself and proclaiming himself to be a talentless elf, otherwise known as
Cotton-headed ninny muggins.
Whoa, I have no idea what that means, but it sounds rough. A few moments later, after getting demoted for being a particularly slow elf, Buddy overhears a conversation that clearly wasn't meant for his ears, as the other elves discuss that he should already know that he's actually human.
I think they're too small.
He then decides to meet with Papa Elf, who knows him better than anyone else, to find out more about his human origins. There, Papa Elf explains that he should have known about this a long time ago, but never had the courage to tell him. He then proceeds to recount the story of how he came to arrive at the elven community and who his parents really are.
I don't know what I am anymore.
Apparently, his mom put him up for adoption right before she died, while his dad, Walter Hobbs, is a children's book publisher who lives in New York and is unaware of Buddy's existence. Buddy then decides to pay one of his friends a visit and asks if he knew about his human origin, which he not so lightheartedly replies with,
"You're 6'3" and had a beard since you were 15.
Buddy then tells him that he plans to go to New York to give his father the good news about his brand new 30-year-old son that was raised by elves. Just before he embarks on his adventure, he visits Mr. Claus, who confesses that Walter is actually on the naughty list. Which traumatizes Buddy, but he remains as adamant as ever about meeting his dad. Buddy sets off on his quest and leaves for New York, while he rides a little piece of an iceberg and visits all sorts of strange lands before he finally makes it into his destination. Once there, he discovers all the wonders the Big Apple has to offer before heading to meet his estranged father. Buddy then heads to his main quest, visiting the Empire State Building where his dad works. He proceeds to enter his dad's office as Buddy finally comes face to face with the very man that gave him life, who confuses him for a random caroler and asks him to sing.
I'm here with my dad, and we never met. He wants me to sing him a song.
Well, that's kind of awkward. After showing an overwhelming and a little concerning amount of excitement, he gets escorted out of the building by security, but his motivation remains untouched. Wow, I wish I was half as hopeful as this guy. Seeing as he has nowhere to go, he heads to a department store and discovers all sorts of things, like escalators, perfumes, and even lingerie.
Quite naughty.
At the store, he gets confused for a working elf and gets sent to the kids' corner, where they can take pictures with Santa and his companions. However, he doesn't get the chance to once again meet Santa Claus himself, but encounters Jovi, another worker who has captured Buddy's eyes. He strikes up conversation with Jovi, who at first attempts to send him away, but finds herself a little smitten over his peculiar enthusiasm. Eventually, the store closes, but Buddy stays behind, professionally decorating the area with Christmas ornaments, deciding to stay the night there. That very same night, Walter has dinner with his wife and his younger son, Michael. At home, he is also completely dedicated to his work and hardly pays any attention to the family, but this time around, his mind is elsewhere. He excuses himself from the dinner table and looks at a photograph of his past love, Buddy's mom, finally coming to terms that he might actually be his son, but is avoiding the reality.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
The next morning, Jovi shows up at the store a little earlier, where she takes a shower. Given that her water has been shut off, she sings in the shower and Buddy overhears her, further enchanting him as he confesses that hers is the loveliest voice he has ever heard. She is thankful, but cuts the interaction short, which Buddy takes as his cue to try to take a nap. A few hours later, the busy streets of New York start filling up with Walter spotting Buddy sleeping right in the middle of the windows of the department store.
It's me!
He embarrassingly walks away, but Buddy decides to personally give him a package, in which he expresses his love for his uninterested father. Unfortunately, as soon as he arrives, he is once again escorted by security.
Sorry I annoyed you with my fringe.
Once again, he decides to turn to the department store, where his presence is required as one of Santa's elves. Buddy is then forced to work along with Santa, which he gladly does, until he finds out it's actually an impersonator and not the man he knew in the North Pole.
You disgust me. How can you live with yourself? You sit on a throne of lies.
This is basically the only scene where Buddy is actually upset about something throughout the entirety of the movie. Although fake Santa insists that he's real, Buddy takes it upon himself to unmask him, removing the fake beard right in front of the children.
No amount of therapy will ever make this moment okay.
Anyway, a fight between the two breaks out and our guy is fired. Was he ever hired? From his elf job at the store and is sent to jail. There he decides to call Walter in hopes that he could bail him out, which surprisingly he does. I guess he does have a heart after all. He hopes to figure out whether or not Buddy is actually his kid. He takes him to the doctor's office to get a paternity test done. Of course, our boyish lead is curious and excited about everything and is unable to sit still.
Does he have a name?
No, he has.
He got mad at me. Yes.
He's able to calm himself down once realizes the doctor, who is actually happy from Spider-Man, is frustrated at him and does as he is told. A few moments later, Walter asks about the test results and reveals that he is indeed the father of the strange child. Adult. We then cut to Walter telling his wife about the brand new addition to the family, who takes it surprisingly well and is even excited about the prospect of bonding with Buddy.
I'm not like a regular mom, I'm a cool mom.
Walter tries to warn her that his kid isn't actually what she will expect him to be, but she is not having it. However, upon meeting him, she realizes that Walter was telling the truth. At a dinner table, Buddy asks for syrup for his spaghetti. Yes, maple syrup, and is not shy about pouring an entire bottle on his plate. Walter and his wife have a private conversation and they decide they can't just throw him out in the street. Victory for Buddy! Victory! The next day, Buddy excitedly waits for Michael, his younger brother, to be released from school so they can spend some time together. At first, Michael is embarrassed about his eccentric brother, but he doesn't get much time to act on it as they get bombarded by snowball attacks. As you might expect, our boy Buddy has quite some experience with snow, so I guess you could consider him an expert snowball fighter. After witnessing his impeccable snowball skills, Michael immediately forms a bond with Buddy and they decide to spend the afternoon together. During their hangout, Michael encourages Buddy to ask the girl he likes, Jovi, out on a date, which is completely foreign concept to our innocent guy. He does it anyway though. Jovi accepts and they agree to meet each other at some point during the week for dinner. Yes, another victory for Buddy. The following morning, Walter takes Buddy to his office and has him completely change his attire. Given that he was being extremely noisy, Walter has him go down to the mailroom, telling him that it's exactly like Santa's workshop. Of course, Walter doesn't have to tell him twice before Buddy is speeding off. Surprisingly, Buddy makes quite a few friends at the workshop, accidentally gets drunk, and is the life of the party. Walter isn't too big on this, but in his eyes, anything is better than having to spend time with your estranged son.
You're terrible. You're all terrible.
At night, Buddy and Jovi meet for their date, as you might have expected. They had a blast. They go for coffee, spin on rotating doors, go ice skating, and they even get to kiss. Ah, my heart is warm. The next workday, Tyrion Lannister, a writer that could save Walter's company, shows up at the office and, well, let's just say that Buddy accidentally says some offensive stuff that gravely upset him. Walter has finally had enough of Buddy and kicks him out of his life. No wonder he was on Santa's naughty list, huh? Before he leaves, Buddy leaves a note for Michael, telling him about his departure from the family home. Once Michael was done reading the note, he sets out on a hunt for his father to tell him how much he sucks. Go Michael! This makes Walter reconsider the entirety of his life as he decides to leave the office to go find Buddy along with Michael.
Go get him, Tiger.
All the while, Buddy is walking aimlessly in the park until he encounters his lifelong friend, Santa, the real one this time around. Apparently, Santa is having some slight problems and can't make the reindeer fly unless the Christmas spirit is alive. He tells Buddy that he needs an elf's help, but our boy disappointingly responds that he's a human and won't be any good. Of course, Santa is not having any of it and retaliates with,
"Buddy, you're more of an elf than anyone I ever met."
Okay, I'm going to cry now. Walter and Michael find Buddy, and upon their encounter with Santa, their Christmas spirit has lifted, which of course serves as fuel for the reindeer. Once Mr. Claus explains his slight situation to Michael, he grabs Santa's book of presents and takes it to a local news station in order to keep the Christmas spirit alive. Jovi, on the other hand, tries to help out by singing iconic holiday tunes while others join her, lifting hundreds upon hundreds of spirits. This in turn gives the reindeer enough fuel to finally fly away as the entirety of New York witnesses the event. If that doesn't give them Christmas spirit, I don't know what will. And yes, they indeed saved Christmas. During an epilogue, it is revealed that Buddy and Jovi ended up together, have a kid, and still visit the North Pole occasionally. This is just the sweetest thing ever. And that's all for today. Elf in a nutshell. What a way to save the Christmas, huh? Now, let us know in the comments what you thought of this movie, and as always, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with your friends. Merry Christmas, and see you next time!